The Hanslope Show podcast. Your village, your podcast. It's all about Hanslope.
And welcome to the Hanslope Show podcast. I'm Trev. I've lived in the village since the mid-90s. Still not yet a local, so I'm told. And I've been in broadcasting all my life. And I know there are many stories to tell about the village in terms of history, what goes on now, how we move forward. So this is what this show is designed to do. And thank you so much for all the feedback from the first pilot episode. And that's certainly given me the inspiration to move on and create more for you. So spread the word. For those who aren't on Facebook, please spread the word that we have a village podcast and we have many stories to tell. So on this podcast, all three people we've talked to, they're connected in some way. We're going to hear from James, who runs the kickboxing club at the village hall.
So I've got kind of four main ones who went to the World Championships the last 2 years.
And talking of the village hall, we're going to hear from John Sorrell, who, as you'll hear, has been involved in the village hall over many, many years and can give us a potted history and also what's happening there now.
Well, it was built and funded by the Squire Watts, in about 1840. There's a little bit of vagueness over the exact date, to be a school for the children of Hanslope.
And connected to the village hall is the charitable trust FEOFFEE. We're going to hear from Nigel Stacey about the history of FEOFFEE and what amazing work they've done and continue to do so in the village to this day.
We've got some wonderful talent in the village and some fantastic youngsters. I think we have produced somebody that represented England.
The Hanslope Show podcast.
So first up on the podcast this time is a little bit of history about the village and something you've probably driven past many, many times of your time here in Hanslope. It's the village hall, and to tell us all about it is John Sorrell.
Well, I came to the Hanslope in 1976 as the only GP, got involved in the community, and one of the things that I was persuaded to get involved with was the development of a village hall, which at that time wasn't in the village. It was a church institute in a very poor state of repair and not really functioning very well.
Take us right back to the beginning of the village hall, because it's fascinating, the history.
Well, it was built and funded by the Squire Watts, in about 1840. There's a little bit of vagueness over the exact date, to be a school for the children of Hanslope. And it was functioned like that quite well. And its funding was taken over in 1877 by a village charity called the FEOFFEE charity, which I'm sure you'll have as another podcast at some time.
In fact, they're on this episode, John, so it ties in nicely. That's why we sort of wanted to chat about the early history, because, FEOFFEE were a big part of what they called the top school. Is that right?
That's right, because a little bit later, a second school was built on the site where the current school in Hanslope is, and that became the bottom school.
There we go.
I'm not quite sure why, because geographically they're at the same level, but there we are. It was taken over by a school board in the 1902 Education Act. It was accepted under a Hanslope school board, and it remained under that care until it ceased to be a school in the 1930s. So
the history is a little bit murky in terms of going into the Second World War. Am I right in thinking that? What happened around there?
When the school ceased to be a school, it was taken over by the church with a charity called the Sunday School Charity. And that was actually in 1908 that Sunday School Charities was set up. But it didn't actually acquire the village hall until the 1930s. And it then ran as a church institute for Sunday school and for other church activities. Okay. And it was used by the village, but not very extensively.
It's seen many different guises over the years. But in terms of the involvement in the village, it really has been a focal point for many, many years, but seems to be less recently.
In the 1930s, there was a move, 1920s even, there was a move to set up a proper village hall. There was some considerable restrictions on the Church Institute because it was run by the PCC in effect. The village couldn't really get involved in its development, its repair, its funding, its growth. And so there were some attempts to establish another village hall, and several things happened. And some funds were started to be raised in the 1920s for a parish hall. And there was a charity set up called the Hanslope Parish Hall Charity. Okay. And for some reason that failed. and didn't get ahead. They had some land that they sold off, and the Charity Commission required them to use that money, and it was used to establish the Recreation Ground Pavilion. The top school carried on as a church institute till the 1970s, when one of our what would have been the Newport Pagnell Rural District Councillors, a chap called David Baxter, who lived in Long Street, was also the clerk to the parish council and was quite keen on trying to establish a village hall. There had been an attempt in the 1950s after the Second World War, and about £2,500 was raised. And I understand some negotiations had gone on with Lord Hesketh, who owned the land which is now Western Drive and Watts Arms. And he had agreed in principle to let them have some land to establish a village hall, and some sketch plans were drawn up. And I've seen a sketch plan on Basildon bond notepaper, which I tried to copy, but there was still some controversy in the village between keeping the Church Institute as the centre and a new village hall. And there was a bit of a division between people. And the person was very reluctant to let me have it because he felt that there was still trouble could still be stirred up between the two families.
Really?
Yes.
So it runs deep.
It runs deep. And this was back in the 1970s when I was doing this, discussing this. Anyway, David Baxter and the parish council looked at possibly taking over the running of the Church Institute from the from the PCC of to church. And there were lots of issues. One was that it was much harder for parish councils to raise funds, charitable funds, to improve the thing. I mean, the thing was falling to bits, basically. The other problem is that government can't do lots of things with church property, and funding was therefore limited. So it was suggested, in order to get the best grant, that a charitable village hall trust was set up. We at this time weren't aware that there was already a 1953 village hall trust set up. And I had some very interesting conversations with the Charity Commission over this. And that trust had about £2,500 invested in government war bonds that were still floating around.
Oh, I see.
Yes, which ultimately in about the late 1980s, we managed to get brought into the current village hall trust. Anyway, with David's really motivation and driving force, he approached four of us to become trustees of this new trust. I was one, and there were three other notable people in the village that undertake it as well. Sadly, all of them now have died, which is a shame.
So who is on the trust now? So it's owned by the trust. Is that right?
It's owned by the church still. The church
okay.
are still the landlords. The church, in the guise of the Sunday school charity, which is managed by the PCC. Sadly, it used to be in the hands of the local vicar, but a vicar in the past handed it over to the Oxford diocese, which was a disaster from our point of view. It would have been better to have stayed with the local church, but that's history now.
Okay.
And the charity was set up in 1979. There was available at that time, and it only just because it ceased the following year, charitable funds from the Department of Education, and we got 3/4 of the funds to grow the extension and upgrade the building as charitable funds from the Department of Education. Good old days. And we had to raise a quarter of it, and we did that in various ways.
As a trust now, how many people are on the trust? How many people look after it?
Well, there were the trust was for 40 years, so it ran out. Okay. The charitable trust ran out. We had a lease for 40 years and an agreement with the Sunday school charity via the PCC for 40 years. And that had to be in a particular structure. In order to gain our grant from the Department of Education, we had to use their format for how the thing had to be run. So there were 4 holding trustees who were responsible for holding the lease for the building. And then the thing was supposed to be run by a separate management committee who were elected each year by a membership, because the document required a membership, and we wanted it for the whole village. So we rather liberally said, right, well, all adults in the village are members, which did create some problems when you needed quorums at AGMs and things. And on that basis, the holding trustees also sat on the management committee, which again was not what was required. And that's how it ran. And each year at an AGM, everybody was re-voted, apart from the holding trustees. Sure.
It all sounds extremely complicated in terms of getting to this point of its history.
In 2016, I think it was, we had to renegotiate the lease. And that was a protracted and difficult. If you've had any dealings with the Oxford Diocese, they are not quick. Okay. They are not, and it was very difficult to get it through. So we now have a new trust deed and new trustees. I remained a trustee, but we now have other, and the management committee are now all trustees, and there's no two tiers. Okay.
Oh, that cuts down some of the complication.
You're not kidding.
Yeah. So we're now up to date. Now, over the years, of course, it was used for many years as a preschool in recent times.
Yes. Our main customer, because, of course, we're entirely voluntary.
Since we lost the main client, of course, with the preschool.
Yeah.
I imagine you found it very, very hard. So tell us a little bit about the modern history now and how it survives and going forward, what's going to happen.
Yes, we were very lucky. We added about 3 years ago a big store at the back because Heggs has got so much stuff, and they had an old metal container in Robert Beasley's field, which he was very pleased to get rid of. Yes. And that was funded on the 106 money from the new developments, which was very fortunate for us. Otherwise, we depend very much on fundraising and hires, the hire charges. We have a tariff for locals, which is cheaper than a tariff for people outside. But outside events, particularly at the weekend, when the hall wasn't being used by preschool, are a major fundraiser because people pay a lot more for hiring the hall if they're not from the village.
Yeah.
But it's still a struggle. The fundraising is very important. And now we've just been landed with having to spend nearly £70,000 on the roofs.
And in terms of events there that happen, do I see that there's the pop-up cake stall that comes along as well?
There's a Heart and Soul choir, which used to be a Hartwell-based choir, but it's got a lot of Hanslope people in it. They rehearse their kickboxing, who's been a client of the Village Hall for quite a long time and very popular. We have the drama group, the name of which escapes me, True Colours Children's Drama, and they have sessions there. And there are a couple of bands that hire the hall to practice. There is a Zumba class, and I think there's a chair Pilates class at the moment. It's used quite a lot for kids' parties.
Yes.
And we occasionally have wedding parties. And we've done a few wedding receptions because the hall can look pretty nice when it's dressed up for a wedding reception.
Yeah, it really can.
And we're actually looking at getting licensed to be a wedding venue, although that's quite expensive with the roof hanging over us as well.
Now, obviously, there is much talk about the new pavilion in the village and the work that's going on there. I
was a bit concerned that we looked at a development for this about 8 to 10 years ago, and plans were drawn up by the parish council actually at that time. It's very much more sports orientated, and I don't think that's a big challenge to us. I looked at their plans, I went to their open days, and although they're going to greatly enlarge the sports hall and make it higher for badminton and things like that, it's going to all be marked out for sports, and I think that would be a disincentive for weddings and things. So I think that the village hall's still got a role. We're not really competing with, and you know, it's a venture that for different things. It's horses for courses, isn't it?
The Hanslope Show podcast. It's all about Hanslope.
A massive thanks to John Sorrell. There will be another episode of the Hanslope Show podcast that will have the full interview of myself and John's chat. There was a lot to get in, and we'll let you know when that podcast is out in the next week or so, and you can hear the extended version of the Village Hall history. So I said that all the interviews today were connected, and certainly is for the next one. This is James, who runs Raptor Kickboxing at the Village Hall.
Okay, so I teach on a Tuesday at the Hanslope Village Hall. We start from age 5. So next year I'm actually having 4 lessons rather than 3. So I used to have teenagers and adults together for the last hour. So I'm just shifting them around a little bit because there was becoming too many of them. Some of the teenagers are bigger than the adults. So
that's same in my house as well, I must admit.
Yeah. So we're starting at 4:00 every Tuesday for the young ones, which is ages 5 to 7. And then ages 8 to 12, so that's a 45-minute class. So then we go to ages 7 to 12, roughly. I'm not strict on this if they want to go up one or stay in the same one.
Sure.
For another 45 minutes, so that's at 4:45 until 5:30, and then teenagers will be 5:30 till 6:15, and then the adults get a full hour. So there's 3 45-minute sessions and an hour session for the adults at the end.
Tell us why kickboxing. What's your background in kickboxing?
So I started quite late, really. I was 24. I've always been interested in martial arts and kind of a bit via computer games and films and watching Karate Kid and Bloodsport and things like that when I was young. So took it up in, what would it have been, 2003, got to brown belt, and then my daughter came along, which interrupted that.
The kids always ruin everything.
They do. They still do. They still do. So had a little break of maybe 3 years, and then I joined back up. Then I joined my daughter up, and then my son came along. We joined him up as well. So I competed a little bit locally, Coventry and Milton Keynes. Got my black belt in 2015, and from that sort of point, then my knees started to ache quite a lot from competing.
The age gets you in the end.
Oh, always. So the next kind of logical step was to start teaching rather than competing. So once you've got a black belt, you can keep training, obviously, and go through Dan levels. Anyway, so started doing that. So I started teaching for another club, which was my instructors club, in 2015. That was at Hanslope. That started at Hanslope originally. So I was kind of away from his customers are in Newport and Great Linford. In 2024, I broke away from him and started my own Raptor Kickboxing. So it stayed at Hanslope still on a Tuesday. I teach it in Fairfields, which is near Stony Stratford, on a Thursday. Similar sort of times and setup. And now in Olney as well. I started in Olney just over a year, maybe 18 months ago.
Okay.
So people can, if they want to travel, train more than once a week, they're close enough usually to get from one to the other if they want to do another day.
For those that don't know the disciplines of kickboxing, why is it such a good sport for young and old to get into?
As a parent, you'd know most people send their children either because they always wanted to do it or they want their child to be more confident or to have some sort of element of self-defense. Kickboxing, unlike more traditional things, is a bit more, what I would say, realistic. So you've got jiu-jitsu and things like that where it's all you're rolling around on the ground. From a self-defense point of view, I think if you're on the ground, it's already too late. You know, if you're in a really bad situation, there's probably more than one of them. So I prefer the more sort of stand-up, keep away type of striking martial arts, really. And I think they're just the most practical ones. So the previous club had some karate techniques in, and the difference being they would make weapons with their hand, whereas kickboxing, you're wearing gloves. So I got rid of anything traditional when I started up Raptor Kickboxing a couple of years ago. Everything is based on a closed fist. All the kicks translate over. But I just think it's the most practical. These karate techniques where you have all these different shapes, ridge hand, knife hand, one knuckle. I think if you needed to use it, if you were backed into a corner, you're not going to think, oh, shall I use this or shall I use this? You're going to punch and kick, and that's it, you know.
Yeah. And why do most people come along to kickboxing? Is it to keep fit? Is it for confidence? Is it to defend themselves? Or is it all those three?
It can be all three. Adults tends to be, they've had an interest in it and never really, went with it. I've got some people like that, sort of started quite late. They've always been interested in it, and things like Cobra Kai come along, that sort of gets people interested.
Do you see a spike after that, by the way?
A little bit, yeah. Well, they certainly talk about it. There's a lad who trains in Hanslope, and he's obsessed with it.
It's a great show if you haven't seen it. It's on Netflix, wasn't it? And it's brilliant. Yeah. And of course, it really, obviously, it was the spin-off of Karate Kid, which a lot of us grew up on in the 80s. We try to show our kids Karate Kid, and it's a really slow film, actually. It's funny. Yeah. It just hasn't dated very well. But have you got anybody in your class who's called Daniel, by the way? Have you got...
Daniel?
Daniel. Daniel's song. Obviously from the
No, I don't actually. I'll have to try.
Okay, we need Daniels. We need some Daniels.
Yeah.
So it's also a combination of all those three things, and that's what gives the people the confidence to come along.
Mostly adults, it's fitness, and there's a bit of a community there as well. It's not always huge sweaty session where you come out exhausted. It's quite we're quite a friendly bunch. Everyone gets on with each other. You tend to work with a partner at some point, which we switch around. So there's a social element there. People tend to send their children, like I mentioned, so that they've got something about them, and they make friends there. A lot of the ones in Hanslope already know the other children their age anyway, because they go to school together.
Yeah.
So it's a nice little community, I think. Anyway.
Yeah. And do some of the kids or adults go on to compete?
Oh yeah. So mostly the kids. So I've got kind of 4 main ones who went to the World Championships the last 2 years. Actually, 3 of them went the year before. This year it was in Swansea. And we came back with 2 golds, 3 silvers, a number of different categories with sport boxing, kick low, kick light. So there's different categories. Whilst you're there, you may as well enter more of them, So we came back with a decent medal haul from the 4 fighters. Year before it was in Frankfurt. Next year it's in France, near Geneva. So that'll be good.
Amazing.
I'm pretty confident they'll qualify for that.
Yeah.
But it's expensive, so whether people go or not is a different
Sure.
issue. Yeah.
Well, look, thanks for talking to us. It's brilliant what you do for the village, and I imagine so many people get lots out of it. How do we find out more about it? Is there anywhere we can go?
Yeah, so we're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. There's a website, www.raptorkickboxing.co.uk. Anything on there. There's leaflets around the village. There's leaflets at the town hall. I'll be getting leaflets delivered in January as well. So I think most people know about us, but maybe some people I do get some people sort of inquire, then don't come back, don't turn up, then they inquire again 6 months later. So
yeah,
trying to get the message across that we're quite friendly, really. We're not, you're not going to get repeatedly punched in the face on your first lesson and stuff like that. So it's a difficult message to get out there. So we try and cater for everyone.
And in terms of the community, I imagine, like you said, people create friends for life through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the children tend to know each other anyway. We get some people from Road and Olney as well, if they can't make the date they started on in Olney. So, they get to know each other, and the adults as well. Adults don't see each other as much unless they're in the pub at the Cock or the Watts.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much. Continued success for 2026, and it's on Tuesday evenings in the Village Hall, and right. we know how to find out where you are, and it's Raptor Kickboxing.
That's right.
The Hanslope Show Podcast. Your village, your podcast. It's all about Hanslope.
Up next, then, is the fascinating story of FEOFFEE, a charitable trust in our village. And to tell that story is Nigel Stacey.
I've been a trustee of the FEOFFEE estate for quite a number of years now, and I'm currently chairman.
And for those that are unaware of FEOFFEE, first of all, it's quite an unusual word, FEOFFEE, and every time I type it out and tell someone about FEOFFEE, I always get the spelling wrong. So and sometimes I think that it stands for something, like Federation of. But tell us about the name and where that comes from.
The name is an old Saxon name, and it's the initials don't stand for anything, but it's a deed or a trust, and it's a sort of semi-legal term, and quite a few villages have got FEOFFEE trusts. If you go into Oney, you'll see some of the almshouses have got FEOFFEE inscribed on the front of the building. So we're not unique in having a FEOFFEE.
And tell me about the history, because that's fascinating in itself, and tell me how it started up as a charitable trust.
It is fascinating, and it sort of goes back really to the roots of the village. The first contributions made, first gifts to charity from which FEOFFEE evolved were nearly 500 years ago. If you're in church and you're sort of finding the service a bit heavy going, you can look on the wall and there is a list of some of the early contributors to the trust. And also, when the Selsey Forest was enclosed, the villagers prior to that had the right to go and pick up kindling and fallen wood. And as that was deprived from them, they were then able to, the trust was given land. And for many years, FEOFFEE ran allotments for the villagers, quite substantial tracts of land. And this, in the end, faded out. And we've now left with farmland, which we rent out for the village. Over the centuries, the way FEOFFEE has helped people has been fascinating. It's always given to people in need. Some money has to go to the church. But that money for the church is for the structure of the church, not for the day-to-day running. We used to run the village school when the top school, which is now the village hall, that used to be run by FEOFFEE, but obviously then that was taken over by government. Well, there were sort of some traditions that went on. For example, there was a phase when the trust would give a blanket and a Bible to every newly married couple. We are fairly well resourced, or we've got a fairly big capital sum, and that gives us a disposable income each year that we spend. As I said, some has to go to the church, and then education and social need. But even in the time I've been on the committee, even sort of the education bit has changed. When I first joined, every year we would get quite a few applications from students at university or further education for help with books. And we hardly get any applications for money for books. And now it tends to be sort of specific programs for computers or the like. So even in our time, in my time, things have changed and evolved. I think we do face some restrictions in the future in that the village has grown so much, the pot has got even more people to spread over. And that actually is one of the conditions, and I think why we've been able to keep our identity quite strongly, is that we can only make grants to people who live in the parish. So occasionally we get requests from people who've looked up on records and see that we're a charitable estate and make applications, but unless they live in the village, unfortunately we can't help them.
Sure. It's a fascinating charity. And how many years have you been involved, Nigel?
I think we're 25 or 6. I'm not. You get to a stage where it's rude to count.
I won't hold you to it. And in your time, what surprised you most about being involved with FEOFFEE?
Well, I suppose it falls into two categories. One is that we've got some wonderful talent in the village and some fantastic youngsters. We've been able to help people with sporting activities, and well, I think we have produced somebody that represented England, but for their own individual and sporting development. I mean, I find that very gratifying, and certainly where we've helped, and I say we help. FEOFFEE sees itself as a role to top up. So we've had children or youngsters that have gone on these school trips to South America and South Africa, and they work in the community, and they have to raise quite a lot of money, and we'll top that up. And again, it's very gratifying to see youngsters wishing to do something with their lives for the benefit of others, which is really just what FEOFFEE is about. Also, one of the saddest things now is that we're getting more social need, and to all intents and purposes, we look a fairly prosperous village, but there are some individuals that haven't been so lucky and are struggling.
And that's at the heart of what FEOFFEE is, isn't it? And how many people sit on the committee, Nigel?
There are 12 of us, and all village people, variation of ages and occupations. So we're a good cross section, but I think the one thing we've got in common is a desire to make a difference, and we're using the FEOFFEE estate as a catalyst to achieve that.
And it certainly has changed many lives over the years, and it's quite a responsibility that you have as a committee, isn't it?
Yes, because we are trustees, and we are literally that. We're carrying the torch for a relatively short period in the whole scheme of the trust's existence, and I hope that we'll pass the baton on to the next generation of trustees in such a good way. I mean, I think we are lucky in the past that Hanslope was a very prosperous village. You've only got to look at the size of the church and the money that went into that. from lace making and other industries in the village. And we actually have received recently a donation, but the fund isn't really growing. And I think as the village grows, it's a shame that we can't grow with it in order to give the same opportunities and help to those that we have in the past.
For people listening, Nigel, they will be thinking, how did that grow in the past, and why is it not growing so much now?
Well, I think, as I said, in the past, we had grants of land, both directly and through when Selsey Forest was enclosed. People who died that became benefactors and made huge contributions to the fund. We've got, other than the land, the money we've got invested in investments, and it's the income from that. We try not to spend the capital, but we do spend all of the income each year responding to the applications we get.
We're so lucky to have FEOFFEE on our doorstep, and long may that continue. It sounds like you and the committee do an incredible job. How do people find out more about it and get in touch if they want to know more?
We're on the village website, or just type in Hanslope FEOFFEE Estate. Wendy Thompson is our secretary. Just correspond with her. I would just ask or like to explain that unfortunately we can't fund everything. We have got a limited amount of resource that we can spend each year. There are many people we've turned down, but we would rather top up than be the first port of call. So if you would like to apply, and I would encourage people to apply if they have a genuine need, either educationally or whatever else we cover, if you could use us last, because it's the only way that we can make the funds stretch, because that's the problem, I think, especially with the social requests we get. And it's understandable. People are desperate and they come to us needing money instantly, but there are other sources of help through the government, and if they could be tried first, and then we can see if we can help bridge the gap at the end. And I think that is one of the sad things, is that some of the social, it must be terrible to get that desperate that you need help, but because it's been left so long, it tends to be quite a big amount people ask for. If we're not careful, that in our generosity, we will deprive other people, if we don't have enough money.
Thanks to Nigel Stacey and the incredible story of what FEOFFEE does for our village. And thanks to John Sorrell and James from Raptor Kickboxing. If you'd like to be involved in the Hanslope Show podcast, then drop me an email, trevor@thisismyfilm.com. And we'd love to hear from you if you're a club, an organisation, a business, whoever you are involved in Hanslope. We want to get your story on future Hanslope Show podcasts. And thanks for listening.
The Hanslope Show podcast. Your village, your podcast. It's all about Hanslope.